Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Motherfucker, I've known you since you were born. That's crazy.
You have, I guess, eh?
Yeah.
That's
So-
cool. This is the first time I've done a podcast, so
Whoop, whoop.
especially, yeah. So, from the other side of the world too, which is pretty
Right.
badass.
Right. Okay, so look, you submitted 2 photographs, and they're both... Your images are amazing, and we'll put a link in the description for people to check out, because your photographs are really, really great. And your dad is the one who got me into photography, so...
Well, I can say the same for myself, actually.
So he inspired you, yeah. Of the 2 photographs, you've got... which one do you want to talk about first? You got the one with the tree, or you got the ones of people in silhouette?
Let's talk about the silhouette one, actually.
Awesome.
Because this was actually taken in Yellowstone National Park back in fall of 2018. And I was with my girlfriend, and we were on a road trip for 6 weeks across the continent, really. It was really awesome, and we really made it a point to try to stop in as many national parks as possible. And it was just a random shot. We were, I think it was near one of the geysers, and it was just perfect. The lighting, basically, the way the sun was positioned, and obviously, I really am a big fan of silhouettes, to be honest. I don't know. There's something really cool about just the way they come out, and kind of striking in some ways. Sometimes,
I love 2 things that are happening. One is, as you're describing this, there's a crow flying somewhere behind me. So as you're talking, he's like, which is pretty funny. 2 is, okay, so since we have to describe the picture, because it's audio, so if they want to see the photo, they have to go online. What it is you have the sun, which is coming through the steam or the mist, and the sun is like dead center.
Yeah, so basically, we were walking. So, as I don't know if you've been to Yellowstone, many people have heard of Yellowstone, and it's a pretty popular. It was actually the first national park, I think, in the world back in I don't even remember, 18 something. We were, the park is massive, and we were near some geysers, and there was steam rising, and it was probably the end. Yeah, it was probably the late afternoon. We're trying to get in close, and there was a bunch of tourists. These are all tourists that you see, the figures below, and I just looked at it, and I was like, this is really cool. So I was like, I remember taking a few shots and I got this one here, I got to the point where the people were kind of spaced out in a way that you could look at their movements and their, not their expressions, but just their, I guess, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just
their gestures and
all the gestures, basically, yeah.
Like if we think about what's that called? Sign language, right? So in sign language, basically, the people are communicating through gesture. And so on the one hand, so let me just describe. Okay, so the bottom part, the bottom fifth of the image is full on black and white, just shapes, silhouettes of people. On the far left, it's like a woman is standing, and next to her, it looks like a guy is taking a picture of his girlfriend who's kind of standing there with her hands up onto her face. Then you have this other guy who's walking away. Then you have like this kind of weird couple, and then you have this guy just hands in pockets. And then you have this woman sort of just pointing up, and then you have another guy standing with probably arms in pockets with his jacket on. Then you have this other guy who's got this really bad posture, who's kind of like
terrible posture. Yeah.
And then you have like 4 people just there, and you've got the high mountain. It looks like
like the landscape's kind of rising in the distance, and it was just actually really, I don't know, I've never really taken a shot quite like this. It added to something that a lot of the time you're trying to find, when you're in a very crowded area, sometimes you're trying to I guess. You're keeping your eye open for something a little unique, and this was just, it was perfect combination.
Yeah, it's wicked.
Of where I was positioned, and just the time of day, and the mist that was rising,
and they're all they're stuck on a walkway, I guess,
exactly. That's what made it interesting. Yeah. I think the fact that it was almost like they were posing for me in a weird way, well, they weren't quite posing for me, but it was all like in the same plane. So
Yeah. It's
I think,
really ideal.
yeah, exactly. You know what? I think that's what makes it really. I don't think the photo would have
Sure.
really done,
Well, it's you
been
have like a
as
funny,
striking.
yeah, and you have a funny like story of people. It kind of reminds me of those really crappy, and this is a compliment, but it reminds me of one of those really crappy, what are they called, stock photos of they'll have mountain climber, where they'll have like a person in silhouette mountain climbing, and behind them they'll have this amazing vista, and obviously the mountain climber is like 3D rendering. Or 2D
Or he's
rendering.
photoshopped in or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. So these it
like
looks
some of those cheesy shots. Yeah.
it looks like a perfectly fake photo, but on the other hand, it's not. It's not. It's like the gestures aren't right. Like the silhouette is so sharp and perfect and black. But why would anybody have this like weird gnome hobbling in the middle like wah, 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 It was such a good
Man.
photo, man. I love it.
Yeah, I was actually, I didn't even realize initially. I was just kind of showing, looking through and then showing my girlfriend. She was like, "Holy crap! Like these are pretty unique,
Yeah.
in the sense." And yeah, like sometimes I don't know with photography, or at least with me, it's a lot of the time it's just a combination of being in the right place and I guess seizing the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why sometimes like after in at any point when you're with your camera, sometimes you go home or you're reviewing your photos and there's something that you didn't even realize and it turns
Sure.
out great. And
Mm-hmm.
that's actually one of the things I love about photography.
Sure.
There's all that there's an element of surprise, at least for me, in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
You know?
can you remember what kind of camera you were shooting with at the time? I mean, it's an SLR, I'm assuming. Is this the Olympus that you were shooting with?
Yeah, so it was so it's a Micro Four Thirds camera, and I love the Micro Four Thirds. I find they're quite ideal for for just in the sense of like travel. They're just more compact and they're easy to just carry. A little less cumbersome. I mean, like I was mentioning in the beginning, I really liked one of my first cameras was like a simple point and shoot, which was actually pretty good for its day. And at the end of the day, the camera, I guess that's small enough that you're going to have with you often is what that's how you're going to get a lot of your photos, I guess. Yeah, so basically that camera, which unfortunately kind of broke, it got a lot of use. Like I had it for quite a few years,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, it is an Olympus. So it was Olympus like PL5.
Right.
And I guess you could say it was one of my. I mean, I've never had a full frame SLR. I've always had like Micro Four
Mhm.
Thirds,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know, really good quality for what it
Well,
is.
here's the thing.
And
I want to interrupt a sec only because you don't have the full frame. But at the end of the day, looking on a large monitor right now, when I'm looking at it, and in
Yeah.
terms of how people will see your images, it's beautifully. Well, most importantly, it's like technically it's a beautiful shot. So it's kind of like, well, what else do you need?
No, I agree. I don't think you need the best. You don't need the best equipment. I mean, I know some people that spend loads of money on cameras, and then
And their photos are
oftentimes
shit.
they hardly ever take them out. And the other thing is there's some questionable stuff they're doing with them. But that's it. Like, I mean, I also know people that are they just got that eye, and so sometimes all they have is a cell phone and they're taking amazing shots.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's really it doesn't. I think like anything, it has to do with the operator more than anything.
Right.
I mean,
agree.
I get that.
agree
A lot of the
100%.
time, sometimes, and I'm sure maybe you get that too. Like when maybe you've shown people you're talking about a photo, and they're like, the first question is like, "Wow, what kind of camera are you using?" I get that a lot,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
and it's a little more complex than that.
Sure.
I think.
So let's move to the next image because first of all, the gallery that you sent over is a clip, and listen, I've seen your photographs for years. Your photos are very good, and the gallery that you have is just
thank you.
filled with great photos, right? So somebody who's going to go on them is going to be like, holy shit, this guy's. First of all, you've traveled a lot, and
Yeah, that definitely it helps to get you to really cool locations.
Sure,
That's
sure. So let's discuss the other photo of the. Describe what I'm looking at.
yeah, sure. Okay, so this was actually from the same trip, and I think it was only taken maybe a day or two apart. This is also in Yellowstone, and also similar time of day. So late, late afternoon. We were. This was actually well. Okay, so technically, I guess it wasn't Yellowstone. There's a park called Grand Teton National Park, which is basically connected to Yellowstone, so it's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more south.
Yep.
Uh, Great state of Wyoming, and yeah, so we often like I love going out at times when it's that golden hour. This is
Mm-hmm.
a perfect example. Like the golden light as the sun's coming down, and it's just right before sunset. I usually will go out around that time. I'm not a morning person, so it's really hard for me to get up early,
To
to get,
say the least. So what time is it right
yeah.
now in Montreal?
In Montreal right now we're 11:30 p.m.
Right, exactly.
or
And this is
23:30.
yeah. So for you, this
Yeah.
is morning time.
For me, well, I mean, this is like I would say it's like late afternoon in my world.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, because I'm really a night owl, and I work evenings, I work nights sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really not a morning person,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of traveling or camping, because
Right.
you want to take advantage of the daylight. So
Sure.
I can make myself be a morning person, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not my by default. That's not how I
Right.
how I operate.
And
I'm
we are
just-
going to
yeah.
get into how you operate in a little bit because that's also
Oh
a
boy,
huge reason of why I wanted you on
it's gonna be a case
podcast.
study, eh?
Well, no, but it's wicked. Back to the photograph. So let me so I can describe it first, just because it's the first time I'm seeing it. Right. So I open the file. It's you've got this beautiful golden field, and it's quite flat. And on the back, because of first of all in the front, the sunlight is making it all golden. There's this lone tree just bathing in this light. Behind are some hills. I wouldn't call them mountains, but they're hills. And it's a sort of a kind of a cloudy, upset, turbulent weather pattern system above. And yeah, it's very
Definitely.
arresting. So you take it from there. Why do you think this image stands out?
I don't know. I've always liked shots where you have like I guess the subject is like kind of like a lone subject um amidst a really vast vista, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It just draws you into it.
Mm-hmm.
Just makes it look a little kind of like not that it's lonely. It's like it's in its solid. Maybe it's a little bit of solitude.
Mm-hmm.
I just really like the colors, like the
Mm-hmm.
contrast, like how the sun has lit up the field and has lit up the tree as well.
Mm-hmm.
And in the background, it's kind of cool. Like it's almost like the hill. Yeah, like you were saying, maybe not quite mountains. They're hilly. They're like I guess there's a range in between, but how it's those are much darker, and the skies as well is like you were mentioning. It's definitely. I believe it was raining on and off that day, so there's definitely some rain still in those clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. It was just really cool to put it all together.
Right. So for would
Yeah,
you
go for it.
this if you describe your because for example, okay, you're born, you have your life, you grew up in Montreal, blah 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 blah.
Right.
I ended up moving from Montreal to Hong Kong. I get this. My cousin, who's your mom, sends me a text. Oh, Danny's traveling the world. I think he's gonna be near you in Hong Kong. Maybe you guys can meet. So let's go to when you're an adult, like you're a full-fledged human being, and we meet for the first time. We haven't, I couldn't picture your face. I have no idea. I haven't seen you in like more than 15 years or whatever. I was like, sure, I'll meet you. Sure. So we decide to meet in Hong Kong. And so why don't you describe the first time we met up?
Sure, yeah. Well, so actually, I guess to give some backstory, so that was one of the first, I guess, big trips I ever did, and it was, I've always been interested in traveling and seeing other places, and I guess I was at a point where, I wasn't doing much else at that point. with my life. I just working consistently and in the restaurants. Like I was working at a restaurant, and I was like, yeah, I really it was one of those things you think about for a long time and you want to pick up and go. And so that was in 2009, and I actually started my trip in Hong Kong, and I think I actually met up with you 9 months later when I returned to Hong Kong before heading home. Um, so I think I'm not really sure if there'd been any communication before in 2009 initially when I got there. Um, but I remember we met, and well, let's see. From my recollection, I think we were exchanging messages. I guess it was what, like MSN Messenger or email. I don't even know what back then what there was. I remember there was a lot of internet cafes
Mm,
back in that day in that time. Definitely no cell phones, nothing like that. So it was a totally different experience in terms of like the technology.
sure.
Because as I've traveled more and more, it's almost impossible now without a cell phone to do things. You got to sign up for things or
Right.
like book things, everything with your cell phone. It's crazy.
Right.
Um, and I think I remember we met up in, I think it was Hong Kong Island. I'm not sure if were you on a lunch break
Yep.
or
So we met for
something like that. Yeah,
dumplings. It was
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, you took me to local
Well, it was
restaurant.
Beijing Dumpling House. So it's Beijing
That
dumplings, and
it was awesome, man.
this was after your trip, and I was most fascinated and enamored with your stories of. I think you had just come from Mongolia.
Yeah, Mongolia. So I think okay. So when I was in, I believe it was at that point. I think it was August or end of August when we met up, and I think Mongolia had been sometime in probably June. So I had actually, um, I was very fortunate. I was able to see a large part of Asia. Well, very small part, but like I guess it depends in what context you're talking about, right? Because before Hong Kong, before returning to Hong Kong, I went to Macau and then Japan, South Korea, a bit of the eastern part of Russia, and Mongolia before that, which I
Okay.
highly recommend to
Right.
everyone. I mean, that was 10 years ago. I don't know what's changed. I'm sure many things have changed, but I'm sure a lot of it's still, very similar.
Here's what I remember. I remember you being really kind of blown away by how Nazi paraphernalia was really big. So do you think the Nazism in my Mongolia is still there?
Right, right. So, I mean, you're talking about the swastika, obviously, which is not quite the, you know, Nazi symbol. It's the
Oh, are you talking about
Buddhist,
Buddhist?
and
The Buddhist or the Nazi one? Because I thought you told me that I thought well I remembered as you being like blown away by no like proper SS Nazism and not okay.
there was actually, yeah. So throughout Asia, obviously, there is the Buddhism sign, which I think I have a feeling a lot of people maybe who live in North America have no idea about that. Um, but actually, yes. Come to think about it, in Mongolia, there was I guess it was weird. It was like a bit of a neo-Nazi movement. I don't think it was a very prevalent one, but there definitely was, some young people sporting SS and
Which is just kind of
like
like
white
what the
power symbolism.
fuck?
Yeah, which was, I remember I was traveling with a Finnish guy at that point, and we were just laughing at them, because this was just didn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes you wonder, like, these people really know what is going on exactly, or
So are some
you
of the
know?
photographs from that trip on the link that you sent me in those galleries?
Actually, yeah, there are some. So again, I think my photography has evolved since then. Um, but definitely there was some good ones. I mean, again, that was with that little point and shoot camera I
Oh, okay,
had.
okay, okay.
That was, but you know what? It was still like we were saying before. You don't necessarily need the best camera to get
Mm-hmm.
some really cool images.
Mm-hmm.
So there was definitely some neat ones.
Yeah. So
And
so when I was going through the gallery, just because to fast forward a little bit closer to the present, in
yeah,
2016 I moved back to Montreal for a little bit, and then your dad, and Bev, who I want to have, I want to have on the show as well, on the podcast as well, said, "Oh, let's go to this place, take pictures of the migrating snowbirds." And I was just like, that was a funny experience. So how much of a drive was it to get to that lake?
Yeah, so that was a good 2 hours. I think it was southeast
Right.
of where we were. And I'm trying to remember the name of the town because we'd been there a year before with Bev and my dad, and it was really cool. Like, I'd never seen something quite like it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, yeah. So
it was amazing, to have something like that. And yeah, so I think that was the second. I think we've only gone twice actually. The second time we went was with you and I can't remember what his name was. My dad had his friend with him, the guy that had those little sandwiches and he brought a bottle of wine. Remember that?
Yeah.
Which was a nice little break. But yeah, no, it was really.
So to describe that thing, you head in the car, drive for a significant amount of time, get to basically it's this little town, just a town with a big lake next to it that happens to be on the migration path of snowbirds, and
Yep.
you get there and there are thousands and thousands of these birds. Nuts.
No, exactly. Like I said, I've never seen something like that, especially like so close to home for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's almost overwhelming because you don't even know where to start. As a photographer, you're like, what do I do? What do I, you know what I mean? Like, so I guess you just
start.
you just go and go and see what happens. But no, it was really
I noticed
cool.
one of the photos of the snowbirds in the sky, in your gallery. That's what I was just like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was cool, man. That was really cool. That was
that was in the first year. There was something had startled them, and thousands upon thousands of these birds just took to the skies, and they looked like fighter, they were
Jets.
dive bombing or something.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was like a tidal wave of birds.
Yeah.
Like even the sound, it was like a shockwave.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah,
that was a unique experience, honestly, because that was the first year we went,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we were so blown away that we were like, yes, we definitely have to go back here.
And so you brought me. That was cool. Thank you.
Totally, it was fun.
So I was in Montreal for 6 months. Then we really connected. You, Bev, and I. That was just really great. One of the things that I look back at that time and really appreciated was that on Tuesday nights you guys invited me. I'm a bit older than you, so it was like, okay, you're roughly the same age. You're in your 20s. Is that right?
Well, back then, I'm 35 now.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Sorry, 30.
Yeah.
So this is only like 4 years ago.
Yeah. So, I guess, I was in the beginning of my 30s.
So anyway,
I was almost in my 20s.
But anyway, so so you guys are all nurses, and you decide on Tuesdays it's you meet for drinks, for beers and chicken wings.
Yeah, so we often had Tuesdays off, and we went to Cunningham's out in the West Island where my girlfriend lives, and so it's like this little Irish pub that has a really great reputation. On Tuesdays they have they have wings all the time, but Tuesdays they have them like 50% off, and it kind of draws loads of people in, and we kind of had that. It was a bit of a, we were basically, I think we went there not every Tuesday, but most Tuesdays for
decompress, to sort of
quite a while. Almost like a good year, 2 years. And awesome wings, and it was just more the company and the people around you, and we often went with a lot of our coworkers,
right? And which
you met a lot of them,
yeah, and I loved that.
I'm sure you heard a lot of our stories too.
Yeah, definitely the front lines of nursing, and because in a way I love the podcast because we can talk shop about the photography, and we can get back to that. But on the other hand, we're living in such an insane moment right now with COVID-19, and
It's beyond insane. Like I don't even know how to. I'm still trying to piece it together in my mind. Like it's kind of like we just stepped into a different universe. Like some sort of parallel universe. But it's like what if type of thing, and then boom, let's throw a viral
right,
pandemic.
right. So describe
Wow.
this. Okay, yeah. So describe your you are an act. So did you? So when I was there, you're still finishing up the studies, but you're working full time, or so you're now full on proper nurse.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
all grown up now. No, well, basically, okay, so I graduated. So in Quebec, the province of Quebec, we have something called CEGEP. So, you know, it, a lot of people go to CEGEP to do a lot of like technical trades and things like that. It's not considered a university like other parts of the world, but like,
It's at college,
you
really.
can it exactly right. So basically what I did was, well, I did it in 2 years, but basically a technical degree, and in nursing, and so I finished that in March. I guess you could say. Well, actually, no. Technically, it was December 2012. By the time I got my license and passed the board exams and all that, it was probably March of 2013. And then about a month later, I started at the Lakeshore General Hospital, which is in the West Island. It's a community hospital that serves the entire West Island as well as the outlying areas like Vaudreuil and
Mm-hmm.
Pink, a bunch of different areas. Basically, it serves about 400,000 people. It's it serves a massive amount of people, and we definitely don't have the the resources that some of the downtown hospitals has, but
Right.
do the best of what we can. And then in the interim, when I was working there, I was also trying to get a bachelor's degree in nursing, like to get basically on a university level, which would give me opportunities if I wanted to work elsewhere, or
Right.
basically just more opportunities, I guess. And I
Mm-hmm.
figured if I don't do it now, I probably never will. So I did that online. Actually, that was through the University of Victoria,
Mm-hmm.
out in British Columbia. Even I'd never been there. Well, I have been there now, but I basically was the whole thing was online. And then I
Right.
did visit the campus. I about I don't know, a year and a half later, just randomly, just
Sure.
because I've been like, hey, I graduated from there. Yeah, so I started in the emergency department, and I've been working there now. So yeah, 2030. Wow, it's been like 7 years.
Wait a second. I in my mind I thought you were in the psych wards, but now you're in the ER now, or you have been for the past few years.
Yeah, I've always been in the emergency
Oh
room.
wow, cool.
I deal with psych sections. We deal with everything. Obviously,
Sure.
it's emergency. So yeah, this is.
So
So
I've got
let me
a
put it in perspective. We have always been short staffed. We've always, had to bust our asses. We have a really good team, which is why I'm still there. That's a big part of it. Like,
Mhm.
I work evenings, like I was saying. So, it's really pretty cool. A lot of really cool doctors, nurses, are respiratory therapy, like the whole team,
right.
PABs, a lot of cool people, a lot of good people. And it's pretty fun. Like I enjoy, most shifts are fun. We have some
Okay.
disaster shifts like anywhere or like any type of job, but um, so we work hard, and we basically have always, the healthcare system in Quebec is, or in a lot of, I guess you could say, most industrialized countries, is always being strained because we have like an older population, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, people are just getting older. People are not having as many kids. The whole baby boomer generation. So obviously these are people that require more healthcare, as they're getting older, and there's a lot of them. So it keeps us busy, and
So so okay. So walk me through okay. So how I've been telling people is that as the COVID-19 is kind of expanded and mushroomed out.
yeah,
In a way, to a certain extent, if I was in Wuhan, where I am in Hong Kong now, Hong Kong is probably about 1 month behind Wuhan, and Montreal is probably a couple of months behind Hong Kong. So
yeah.
when, go ahead. Like,
yeah, I can put in perspective of my, I guess unique experience with this whole pandemic, because I think we'd all kind of been hearing about things, because this really, I believe it was probably end of November and beginning of December that it was really starting to get more and more coverage around the world as to what was happening. Um, and so we actually, even as far as December, we started at our hospital. We started implementing, just a little screening, I guess, like a questionnaire. So when we get new patients, the main question was really like, have you traveled from Wuhan or China? But Wuhan more specifically, because at that point it was really coming out of there. Um,
I have to interrupt
and
for a
that was,
second. Have you been to
yeah,
Wuhan in your travels?
I have. I've passed through Wuhan. Yes.
Boom.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going along the Yangtze River. Actually, that's where I got off the boat along the Yangtze for like a few days.
Okay.
And yeah, so I don't know Wuhan well, but I did pass through,
Okay.
and
Interesting. Interesting. But anyway, so skipping forward back to Lakeshore. Is it Lakeshore General?
it's the LGH. Yes.
Okay. So
Well,
skip.
that's
So you
the
had
abbreviation.
yeah. So you had protocols very early on. But when would you say the shit the because no the shit hit the fan? You sent me a message going, yeah, it's things are starting.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Shit is definitely hitting the fan. So okay. Um. So we were all when something's happening on the other side of the world, you don't really think it's gonna hit you, right? Like, I've never lived through a pandemic. I don't know if you have. I mean, you're not much older than me, so I don't think my parents lived through a pandemic. I
no, this
think
is new, man. This is new.
the last major pandemic, I think, was after World War One with the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Which killed like, I don't even know what, 50, 75 million people. So this is all, yeah, new territory. It was interestingly though, like, I remember for the past few years, like listening to different like infectious disease doctors, things like that, and people, when we talk about viruses, they're always mutating, and often, like we're seeing now, they've jumped from an animal, sometimes to another animal, and then to a person, and they're just always mutating, and it's completely random. And a lot of people have been saying that it's just a matter of time before we get the next the next outbreak of whatever pathogen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but still, like, you never quite believe it. You're in your own reality, you're living your own life, and I would have to say, like, we're April 8th right now. We've been in lockdown for a good, I would say, 3.5 weeks now. And before that so I would say it was it's been about like 2.5 months that the hospital really started mobilizing and being like, all right, you know they've failed, the containment's failed in Wuhan, it's all over the place, it's spreading. Once we started seeing the cases explode in Iran, and once we really hit home, once Italy was,
Mm-hmm.
we were seeing what it was like for the healthcare system in Italy, how they just couldn't handle it. Like, their staff were dropping like flies, and their whole population is being decimated in Lombardy region there in northern Italy, where they had to, like, choose, which, okay, we have this respirator, who gets it,
Yeah.
um and so that's when our hospital decided, okay, first of all, our screening is going to increase now, where anybody traveling, at that point it was like anyone has to be isolated, or kind of like presume, it's suspected of potentially harboring COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
um and also, so we were going to screening. So, I mean, the symptoms we're always looking at, or the main symptoms, you're always asking, okay, or have you had fever? Usually dry cough. There's headache. There's upper respiratory tract symptoms, things like that. So basically, that's the screening, and then of course there was the travel that we were doing, because that was the biggest one. That would show, okay, because at that point it was coming from overseas, it was coming from abroad. There wasn't community transmission yet.
Mm-hmm.
Now the travel question's kind of been thrown out the window, because it's not relevant anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's people are spreading it to whoever.
Yeah. Have you been to England?
I have, yes.
Like, or have you been? Exactly. At this point, it's have you been to London, Ontario? Yeah. It's just like everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. But so our hospital uh, we basically adjusted our whole configuration of our department, where you'd have like we built like antechamber. Like this is amazing, the way things are going, because like okay, if you took a year ago where you were like, oh, we need money to do this project, it'll come maybe in five, like nothing gets done, nothing was, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It just goes to show that governments, when they want to, will find money and put money into whatever it is they need to
Mm-hmm.
get done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So now
So
you're
that was
saying the funding came, and then now you've got the resources.
now it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't think they have a choice. They have to give the resources to us. I mean, I guess they realize what will happen if they
Yeah,
don't,
of
right?
course, of course.
So I think that's also it. So yeah, they built a whole bunch of antechambers. We have all pre-screening areas. We have basically they changed everything around, and it's it's tough though. It's very very heavy in terms of you're dealing with people that are or suspected cases of people where you have to put on your personal protective equipment, and a lot of times we're at a point like in much of the world where there's shortages, where they're telling us, okay, you need to keep like keep the same mask for 4 hours, or you
Right.
know what I mean, you get
Mm-hmm.
one visor per shift type of
Wow.
thing. And we're hearing like other places, like in New York, where they just run out of gear, and once your staff falls, that's it,
Of
it's
course.
just game over, you know.
Um, Okay, so let's just imagine we're back at it's a Tuesday. For some strange reason, we're protected, so we're able to have beers and we're sitting around a table talking. What is the what because of my medical exposure and my a little bit of personal medical sort of background and stuff like that, I could at least engage with you guys in within the conversation, and really nurses who get together, man. It's full on. It's right in there, right?
Oh
So
man, we have no qualms about talking about anything. While we're eating, it doesn't matter.
dinner at
You
your
know,
house is
we'll
disgusting.
we'll talk about explosive diarrhea and people vomiting up fecal matter. Like it doesn't even matter, you know.
So if we were, let's pretend it's a Tuesday, we're sitting around having some chicken wings or whatever. In the past week, what would you say was is there an example of a moment where you said, holy shit, this is one of those stories? Have you had one where it's just like, oh, this is just
Um, wow. In the past week, so I've been working quite a bit, in the past while, to be honest. But
has everybody been asked to come in and put in like crazy hours now?
right, so we've been, because the thing is, okay, here's the thing: we were short staffed before this all happened, so it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like you know what, screw you guys. Here's a pandemic. Deal with that too.
Right.
That's how it was. Almost like the universe was kind of like, you know, like we're gonna test you even more.
Thumbing its
But
nose at you guys.
yeah, so you know, it's tough in the sense that we're starting this with reduced staff, and so now they're implementing everyone who's part time. Doesn't even matter. It's like, no, you're all full time now,
Wow.
which in one way, like, I get it. You kind of gotta pull your weight. We gotta step in and all that. We're lucky we have, I mean, again, this is, I'm lucky. Like, I enjoy my job, and I'm happy I have a job, because many people I know they're on unemployment. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people are just literally, they're at home and they're going to the grocery store. That's basically their outings,
Mm-hmm.
which in a way it's a crazy world, but it's necessary, I guess, to, I mean, essentially all of these measures are in place to try to not overwhelm our healthcare systems,
Right.
and we appreciate that, because as it is, we're waiting for our peak. I don't think it's quite hit yet, but like, okay, so one of the days I had last week that it was just, so there's one residence old folks home near, so our hospital's surrounded by old folks homes, which is another terrifying thing, because this virus like it's like wildfire. It just spreads through everywhere. It'll infect all sorts of people. And of course, the older you are, unfortunately, the more vulnerable you seem. As we're seeing in the data, you seem to be. So, we got quite a few people back to back to back to back that all needed to be
Oh my
intubated.
goodness.
And it's to the point where I mean, that would have been difficult on just any normal day, but now with our personal protective equipment and, we have in our trauma room, we'll have maybe, the team that's inside, and then there's the team on the outside using an intercom. We didn't even have an intercom at first. We had like baby monitors. One time we had like a cell phone that was like
Wow.
broadcasting through one of the phone. It was just a disaster.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And just trying to coordinate everything and keep everyone safe at the same time.
Just for my own
And
sake, please explain.
yeah.
Why is if it's upper respiratory, if it's no more lethal than the flu, if it's all of these things, it's a kind of a mutated coronavirus. Why is it that suddenly you need to have so many more people who are intubated?
So actually, okay. So I mean, we don't know everything yet about this particular coronavirus because there's multiple. I think there's a few different kinds of coronaviruses. This one's actually related to. Do you remember SARS
Mm-hmm.
back in? I mean,
That was really
I mean,
big in
yes,
Hong
I'm
Kong.
sure you
Yeah.
remember SARS because you were in Hong Kong. Yeah, and then it spread to. I know Toronto had some big outbreaks. SARS was actually so they used something when they were trying to determine the level of I guess of how contagious let's say a pathogen is. They call it the R naught. So the higher it is, the more people like a single person will infect. Let's say they'll infect for every one person they'll infect two people, or every one person they'll infect four people. So the higher that number is, the more the R naught is. So SARS was very deadly, but I think it had a lower R naught than this virus than COVID-19. Um, but COVID-19 has I mean, it's less deadly than SARS was, but it's just so much more contagious. And it's actually, you were saying that it's not quite like we were all kind of thinking, oh, it's like the flu, like loads of people die from the flu, but it seems like it's about 10 times more deadly than the flu, than the average influenza virus is. So that's pretty significant, actually, especially, because listen, I work with people. I remember flu season. We got loads of people that die from the flu. A lot of older people with comorbidities, and now um, this it's quite amazing. I'll give you a little example. It kills people really fast. I don't think people realize that if you haven't been face to face with it. For example, we had an older gentleman yesterday who's coming from. He was from one of the homes, the old folks' homes that was having an outbreak, and he had to go into the hospital and get his dialysis. And while he was getting that treatment done, he started getting really short of breath, and he had spiked a fever, and so typical symptoms. So obviously, they brought him to the emergency, and we isolated and all that. But I remember he was speaking and talking, and he was with it, and then an hour later, he was dead.
Oh my goodness.
So it was, and what
Wow.
happens is it's just they're going into acute respiratory distress syndrome. So it's like the lungs. It's basically they're getting so much inflammation that they just crash really
Wow.
fast.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay.
My
Okay.
colleague out in I have a colleague, or well, it was a friend of mine who we worked together. We studied together. We worked together. She moved out west, out to Edmonton. I believe, they had one of the youngest people die, a 27-year-old. Um, and she was telling me the stories. Like, this girl came in and she was telling the staff, like, she's like, I feel like I'm drowning right now,
Okay.
and she died soon after.
Oh my goodness.
I got the story from that side, so it's actually terrifying, and you don't necessarily know how each person's going to react to it.
Mm-hmm.
You might get it, for example, and have, like, I don't know, maybe a dry cough and feel like maybe a little weak or whatever, but you recover no problem. In the meantime, maybe you're spreading it to people if you don't.
Yeah.
Some people have no symptoms, actually,
Right.
whereas maybe I'll get it, and for whatever reason, maybe it's
Mm.
just my genetics or just bad luck. I develop pneumonia, and then my gas exchange is compromised, and then I got to be put on a respirator, and maybe they can't get me off that respirator. So It's I think that's like we never realized it, but I think like all the epidemiologists and all the experts and all the people tracking, possible pandemics were freaked out
Mm-hmm.
just because of that. So yeah, the more I'm working with it, the more I'm like, holy crap, this is it's actually kind of scary. And like you're seeing stuff like in Italy, like we were talking about, and
Mm-hmm.
New York City has been absolutely decimated.
Wow.
We actually have I've seen ads now. They're trying to get nurses from abroad. I mean, it wouldn't work because our hospitals need us, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm seeing offers of like $10,000 a week to go down to New York to work in
Wow.
a an
Wow.
acute
Wow. Wow.
care.
Wow.
Yeah, so and I think New York City has like 4,500 deaths right now.
Wow.
So
Well,
any
man.
densely populated area is pretty crazy. But actually, I was curious because I know Hong Kong seems to be doing okay. Like,
Well,
you guys are quite close to mainland China, eh?
sure. Sure. Well, there was what happened was once people said, okay, you have to get back to Hong Kong before, or else you're going to go into forced quarantine and all this stuff. And there was this massive wave of people coming back, such as myself and Cadence, but people from
That's
all
right.
over.
Yeah, you guys were in Savannah, Georgia for a
Right,
while, right?
right. And so then we came back, and a bunch of other people came back. Uh, who knows? I mean, maybe we're Cadence and I are the people who have it and are asymptomatic. I don't think so. I don't think I think we're always a step ahead of it. And but a lot of people came back from the UK. A lot of people who came back from just all over the place, and that created a new spike in the
Yeah,
community.
I think it's like
So
a second wave, eh?
yeah, yeah. And so right now we're in a sort of a new lockdown of restricted movement and restricted social, getting together and all this stuff because people are trying to once again get a handle on it. And so not out of the woods at all.
No, for sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah. So here's because I have to bring it back to the show in a way or to
Yeah.
the podcast. Okay. So I said to you, okay, have you been doing a lot of photography recently? And you said, well, no, not really. I haven't, because you've been so busy.
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess because yeah, I mean, we're working, and I mean, I guess when you're not working, um, you're kind of resting, or you're just, you know,
Well, you're able to think
uh,
about stuff a little bit more.
yeah, for sure, you're able to reflect. And I'm doing a lot of, I'm oftentimes, I mean, because we're not, to be honest, I have been going out, I've been going for runs, bike
Hmm.
rides, things. It's so weird. Like I'll go for a walk or a run, and literally you see someone else coming, and both of you just moves away. It's
Right.
just
Right.
so odd, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like this is
So it's
like a
interesting.
thing.
So here's the thing. I happen to think that um, there are no not that there are no accidents or anything, but for example, I said to you, okay, well, why don't you send me some photos that capture where your head is at these days? And he said, okay. So
Yeah,
you went through your gallery and you said, okay, well, these two. So you sent me these two photographs. Interesting that on the one hand, it's people in silhouette in Yellowstone National Park, and then this other one you have this tree by itself. How about we wrap this conversation up by you making connections, or are there connections between these two photographs and where you're?
yeah. I guess they're yeah. So in a sense, yeah, maybe subconsciously again, that is where my head is at. So you have that solitary, that lone tree in this vast, field. And yeah, it's kind of like we are being encouraged to keep away, to be alone, and there is a lot of solitude in that. And even that second photo with the figures, the silhouetted figures. I guess when I look at it, I'm like, they're kind of spaced apart. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if they're 2 meters spaced apart, but they're definitely keeping a bit of distance, or at least
Mm-hmm.
most of them are. And
So like some might think, oh wait a second, that's kind of a bit of a stretch, right? Well, is it though? But it's like you have lots of photographs where you're super full on close, really intimate portraits, right? Either in India or whatever.
yeah,
And
portraits are great.
right,
And
but that's not what you didn't. That's not what you sent me. right?
No,
When I
that's not
said,
where. I guess that's
you
not where my
know,
head is then.
so that's
Yeah,
kind of
it's true.
interesting,
Yeah, no, it's 100%.
right?
I guess it's just a symptom of everything we're going through and what
Wow,
I'm going through, and
wow, wow, wow.
I mean, because yeah, this is definitely like our lives are all wrapped around this major event, and
Do you think there's a place for you to make portraits at work of your colleagues, or is that a little
um,
too whoa?
no, actually, so come to think about it, and I didn't even because I guess when you asked me, have you been doing photography, but when I take photos with my cell phone, sometimes I don't consider it I should, because like I was saying, any photo, like even with a cell phone, could be good.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I have taken photos. We've taken photos of each other, like even with our, when we're kind of gowned up in our PPE and all that stuff. So I do have some material, and I mean, I've been wanting to do this actually, maybe maybe when there's circumstance of like not being as busy, maybe there's an opportunity that presents itself where I can, yeah, do some portraits. Obviously with my cell phone, I'm not going to bring my
Mm-hmm.
camera into work,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't know if
But
that'd
because
be really.
here's the thing, here's what's really fascinating to me is that everybody's kind of living a solitary, separated life, and yet
Yeah.
there are people who are at the front line, like you, like my sister, like your sister, like, um, just all these different people.
Yeah, I mean, no, for sure. And forget, I mean, yes, there's healthcare, but even like, when I go get groceries, I see like some of these young kids, working as cashiers, and they don't have any protective equipment usually, and they're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with all sorts of people,
Right.
and or the people stocking the stores, or
Mm-hmm.
people delivering, parcels, packages. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's quite amazing actually.
Yeah.
We're all kind of in a weird.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's just a weird world right now.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's like, it'd be one of those things like, oh, what were you doing in 2020?
Right.
And
Right.
so,
Exactly. Like this is definitely something that is gonna. I mean, yeah, it's like a world event. It's like the tsunami. It's like
yeah,
it's like, wow, where were you
this
when?
is this is something else. And yeah, again, and we don't know how this is all going to come down. Like what exactly is going. Like I said, we don't think we're at our peak yet,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this could get a lot worse before it gets better, or
Sure.
maybe it all depends. Maybe the predictions are going to be, turn out to be better than people thought would
Yeah.
happen. I mean,
Yeah.
I have no idea, honestly.
Right.
All I know is it is something, not to be trifled with,
For
and
sure. Well, just
it's
the little you said is very sobering. In terms of what you've seen just in your little corner of the hospital. I mean, that's wow. That's really a sobering thing to hear.
no, yeah, it's a different. I mean, I guess I'm getting a different point of view for maybe the average person in this whole thing,
Right.
being face to face at times with it. So
Right.
because obviously I've cared with suspected cases, and with confirmed cases, and
Right. Okay, so Danny Chemtov, thank you so much for joining me from this call and this conversation. Obviously, I care about you, and I worry about all of you guys. Yeah, I'll put the link of your photographs in the description. I will have you on the podcast again because, yeah, it's good to hear your insiders take on all of that. So is there anything that you'd like to say at the end? My sister said, what did she say? My sister ended off by saying, stay clean or something like that. She's just like, yeah, just, as a doctor, just like, yeah, just
clean.
stay
Well,
clean.
yeah.
So
Wash
what's your
hands.
advice?
Yeah, definitely wash your. Don't touch your face. I think that's a great one too.
Just don't touch it.
And no, but thanks for having me.
That's
It's
great.
good talking to you. Actually, I haven't actually talked to you in a while. Like, I haven't.
Yeah, this is a
Think
great
one
excuse
thing,
to
but,
meet and
yeah.
talk for sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Why not?
Yeah, thanks, Danny.